All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, when Chris Beard became the men's head basketball coach at Texas Tech in 2016, he took over a program that had, for the most part of their existence, been an afterthought. And I say that because Texas Tech never reached a Final Four, more or less won a national title. And prior to that, you have to go back to 1996 when Tech was still in the now defunct Southwestern Conference to find the last time that they won a conference title. But things quickly changed for the Red Raiders as by under Beard by 2018. He had Texas Tech in their first ever regional final. And then in 2019, Texas Tech came within a whisker of winning it all. And just as soon as it appeared that Beard was establishing his program in Lubbock for years to come, he left Texas last year in favor of Austin and the Texas Longhorns. Now, Beard, of course, is an alum of UT, and home came calling. And of course, they just didn't come calling. They came calling with a bag of money for him to leave Lubbock, and the rest is history. But for anyone who thought that the Red Raiders would just roll over and die following Beard's departure, they need to think again. As Texas Tech is alive and well, and they're one of the best teams this season in the Big 12 conference. Now, Mark Adams was an assistant coach during Beard's entire tenure at Texas Tech, and now he got bumped up and he's the guy in charge. And this Texas Tech team, they have not skipped a beat. You look at Texas Tech right now, they're 21-6, but more importantly, they're 10-4 within the tough Big 12 conference, and that's good enough for second place in the Big 12, only behind Kansas. Now, for Texas Tech, they've had a very solid season, but so far, the exclamation point on this season came, in my opinion, yesterday, when this team, led by Adams, made the 6-hour trek from Lubbock to Austin. And they went over there and they took care of business. And if anybody had the pleasure to watch this game or the opportunity to watch this game yesterday, the fans of Texas Tech turned the Frank Irwin Center in Austin to the United Supermarkets Arena in Lubbock because there was just as much red in the stands in Austin as there was burnt orange. And, it was rather shocking when you see from the standpoint that, you're seeing the UT fans file out of the arena in the waning seconds while the Tech fans just simply took over as it basically became a de facto home game. And I think that's part this team wanting to the fans rather wanting to support this team, but also there's a lot of people that support Texas Tech that are not fans of Chris Beard leaving to go to Texas. I mean, you think about it, and with collegiate sports, the rivalries in the state of Texas, you can make the argument that they're second to none. And it's basically, everybody else against UT. And I say that from the standpoint because, for years, Texas has been Texas, to say the least. And, for a lot of other programs, that they look like they're kind of like their little brother. And it's not just a basketball thing, it's mainly a football thing, but it's mainly, it's something, in my opinion, that has spilled over to that. And I mean, you go back to the days of the Southwest Conference when you had 8 or 9 participants in the conference coming from the state of Texas. And it was basically Baylor against Texas, TCU against Texas, A&M against Texas, Tech against Texas, Rice, you name it. And there's still some of that there. So when you leave Texas Tech in order to go to Texas, obviously there's going to be some animosity, especially now that these teams play each other 2 times a year. And the 2 times that these two clubs met this year, they're very important right now because you look at it. Texas Tech is 10-4. Texas is 8-6, and because of that, Texas is in fourth place in the Big 12. Those 2 losses to Tech are the difference for both of these teams in the standings right now. And you knew a few weeks ago when Chris Beard returned to Lubbock, it was going to be a very hostile environment. Fans definitely wanted to show their displeasure with his decision to leave Texas Tech and go to Texas. And, from their aspect, they got some sort of, trying to figure the right word for it, but they were somewhat appeased, uh, obviously with the outcome. And I think yesterday was the cherry on top for Texas Tech and their fans to go to Austin and win that game. And I say that because obviously you knew that the emotions were going to be at a very high level when Chris Beard came back to Lubbock. But then in a rematch, it's always difficult to beat a team twice in conference play or twice in a year in general. And for Texas Tech to go to Austin and do it, that was big. Now, granted, some of the personnel as far as players are not the same from Chris Beard's tenure at Texas Tech. Some kids have transferred and gone to other schools, but then Tech has also got some incoming players. They also have some holdovers. And, you look at those kids play and they play with a chip on their shoulder because, their coach left them and he went to another school in their conference. So with that said, these kids have something to prove, and more importantly, they're hungry and they want to show that it wasn't just Chris Beard. You look at it, like I said, the fan base, they're really supporting this team. They made the trek yesterday. On top of that, you look at it right now, there is a good possibility that both of these teams could play each other one more time at least. That would come next month in March in the Big 12 tournament, but we'll have to wait and see. And I mean, it's one of those things where you could see Texas is close to Texas Tech, but they're not quite ready to get over the hump. And I mean, Texas Tech was a very good defensive team before. Those philosophies are still in place. We saw that, excuse me, at reign supreme at the end of the contest yesterday. And whenever you can play solid D, it's always going to account for something. Texas Tech, they have the potential to make a run in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, it always comes down to seeding, who you're playing, and how you're playing. A lot of different scenarios to play into that, but nonetheless, they could make a run, and Texas could make a run as well. Because I mean, sooner rather than later, Beard's going to get the guys for his system to establish at Texas, and of course, he'll be off to the races. And that's not to say that Texas is not having a good season this time around under him, but nonetheless, once you get the guys in your system, then you're ready to go. So, two good teams battling it out. But right now, Texas Tech is simply the better team. However, I wouldn't mind seeing a trilogy for this matchup this year. There's plenty of intensity in this. This is truly a rivalry. It's a darn shame that Texas is going to be leaving to go to the SEC soon, so that's going to diminish the amount of times that Texas plays Texas Tech. But nonetheless, for the present, the intensity between the Longhorns and the Red Raiders is at an all-time high. I really, as a fan of college basketball, I would love to see these two teams meet at least one more time because the battle lines have been drawn, so to speak, between Texas Tech and Texas. Of course, Texas Tech got both nods so far this season, but see how things play out for the rest of the campaign for both of these clubs. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.